Hello, Cheers to Business listeners. I'm Ashley Smith, Vice President of Wholesale Pharmacy for DocRx and listener of Cheers to Business. And I want to tell you about the great company I work for. DocRx is a family-oriented company dedicated to tailor operational solutions for patient health and compliance programs that increases the quality and efficiency of patient-centered care, and always with the mission of the patient's health first. With over 10 years of experience helping doctors and their patients with diagnostic tests, patient monitoring, medical supplies, compliance, wholesale pharmacy, physician dispensing, billing, and much more. DocRx is your patient and health compliance solution, both under one roof. To find out how DocRx can help you, your hospital, pharmacy, physician's offices, and any PPE you need for your businesses, please visit us at docrx.com. That's docrx.com, DOCRX.com. Now enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Dr. Gia Wiggins has lightened my spirit by coming on the show again, but the topic's going to be a little serious. We're going to be talking about FRCA, PPP, what the heck those are, and tell everything that we don't know.
It's absolutely true.
Hey, I'm Karen. I'm a former CPA, entrepreneur, business consultant with big ideas.
Welcome to Cheers to Business.
Let's start at the very bottom foundation of what we're talking about.
Okay, so I'll start with the FFCRA is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And it is that bit of legislation that we've all been very familiar with that would allow someone to take up to 80 hours.
Are you having deja vu?
I am.
You know that's the first show we did when COVID hit.
That's right.
It's almost a year later.
Yeah, so then we were explaining exactly what it was and how employers needed to be aware of it and I stand firmly by what I said all that time ago. I think that was back in, I guess that was maybe May or June. But what I said was employers need to be really careful and to learn as much as they can, because whether you know it or not, your employees are going to know that thing like the back of their hand. And I promise you, it's like I'm a prophet, exactly what I said.
You're a genius.
I know. I have employers call all the time and they say, okay, well, what am I supposed to know? Because my employers are telling me that, they're due this time off and they should get these 80 hours. And I was like, I told y'all, did you listen to the podcast? Because they are very aware. But the thing that's really important about the FFCRA and all of the conditions within it, because there are multiple conditions within it. There's a segment, for if you test positive for COVID, or if there is a state mandated quarantine, which we had here in the state of Alabama. And also if you have a medical condition that you need to be quarantined by your physician. And then there was another section on if you didn't have childcare because the daycares or the schools were closed. I mean, it was all these wonderful things within it.
And it was two different ways, right? So if you fell in this group, you had to pay them this much, up to this much. And then they fell in the other group, you had to pay them up to a different amount.
Correct. And so it was full-time versus part-time. Then there was also a piece about if, it was just because you needed care for your children. But the thing that is very important for everybody to understand is that it sunsets on December the 31st of this year. And there is nothing that's come behind it to extend it at this point. So here on December the 7th, 2020, it expires on December the 31st unless something else comes up and, they approve it or extend it. But right now, there are no more 80 hours of pay that you will get the credit for after December 31st.
All right, so if somebody gets COVID in January and they're not already salary and you have a program in place, you don't have to pay them if they're hourly.
Correct. Nothing over than having, PTO or vacation or sick time. No, as of right now, January 31st, I've just been diagnosed with COVID. the answer you have is, well, do you have any PTO or vacation or sick time?
Yeah, and you can't pick and choose either. That's discrimination. You can't tell one you'll pay them and then not pay the next one.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, you can't pay the person that you really like, but that person over there, you want to fire them anyway, so we're not going to give them anything. Or my favorite, I'm not going to pay my outside maintenance people, but I'll pay the office people.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's a whole nother podcast, which is a different level of discrimination.
Exactly. Now, another thing people need to look back, especially people who prepare their own payroll or their accountants prepare their payroll tax returns.
Right.
It's called after the fact. If you don't have a payroll company, you need to double check to make sure if you had to pay people that fell in that realm of the FRCA. I can't even get CLR right. That game with the dice, you do the money.
Right,
Yeah.
right. FRCA.
All right, FRCA. Make sure you've gotten the tax credits that you were entitled to for paying that money. Because the payroll systems, the big elaborate ones can keep up with it, but the others can't.
Right. It needs to be coded correctly. And one of the things that I've always told people is make sure that if someone has taken that time off, then you needed to specify that like on your time off request, exactly what was it for. And you didn't have to pay the entire 80 hours out. It's up to 80 hours. I think we need to highlight, bold, flash, and it was up to 80 hours. So if someone didn't need that entire time, or they were no longer positive and they could return to work, you didn't have to pay. Maybe you only needed to pay the 40 hours. Coincidentally, after it's over, you don't give them another 80 hours. I mean, that was the time. So just very important to make sure that you notate what was supposed to be coronavirus related and make sure that you're giving that to your payroll company and your tax professional, and keep that separate from their regular vacation and PTO and sick time.
What if they get it twice?
If they get it twice, but they've already used up their 80 hours.
They don't get another. It's not.
They do not get a
So it's
second
not 80 per
round.
COVID?
It is not 80 per event. That's happened quite a bit with people not having policies. Companies not having policies and procedures. And let's say that they had someone that came in and they said, I was exposed to COVID, which every company, I'm going to go on a limb and say that every company in America has had some employee to come up to them and said, I've been exposed, because we've all been exposed. Okay. And so then they may go ahead and pay them the 80 hours, not required that the person get tested before they can get the money, and didn't really get anything from any type of medical, care provider that says that they can return to work. So they use their 80 up because they were exposed, because they went to the, a local, watering hole. And so what I've always shared with clients and friends and colleagues alike is, just because someone walked in the door and they said, hey, I've been exposed, or hey, I think I have COVID, you don't have to start the payment that day. You don't have to say, oh, well, we need to put it in the next payroll cycle. You can actually wait until they provide you with documentation to make sure that it's under one of those conditions, and then go back and pay them the 80 hours for that time. I mean, you did not have to do it the moment that they shared it. You could wait a couple of weeks and wait for the documentation to see how much you were going to have to pay out.
I have not heard that this whole entire time.
Yes, I'm like, wait, let's get the documentation. If they tell you they've been exposed, okay, they can bring you back a positive result, or something from the doctor saying that physically they needed to quarantine for whatever reason. We can wait until we get that documentation before you make any type of payments to make sure that it was not a fluke. Because I've had so many companies call me to say that they had a person that said that they were going to get tested. They paid them for at least 40 hours of FFCRA, and the person never got tested.
I could see that happening.
Oh, it happened. People got great vacations during this time. So, I mean, it's very important to have processes in place and not make knee-jerk decisions and reactions. If you have a process that works for you, then you can do it the way that you're supposed to.
Okay, I want you to stop right now and tell everybody how to get in touch with you and your company.
Okay, so my company is Morale Resource, and we are a human resources consulting company, and we've done a lot of focus lately on processes and procedures around COVID and things that are happening right now. But we are a process, procedure, and compliance company, and you can reach me anytime at 251-300-9690. You can email me at giawiggins@moraleresource.com or check me out on my website or on Facebook.
And what is it?
It's www.moraleresource.com.
Yeah, I just wanted it in there again.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, the information's too good, and there's too much out there. There's too much unknown.
Right.
Is it going to be extended? We don't know. That reminds me of the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, because right now, since October 8th, $50,000 and less, you fill out a simple form and they forgive it. Well, word is, whoever they are saying that in January, or when they go back to legislation, that under 150,000 is going to be forgiven. And so you're waiting. So all these people are saying, Karen, my bank. Well, I just took a day and sent an email out to about 5 different banker friends of mine. I said, what are y'all doing about the forgiveness? We don't know. So Regions Bank came out first and said, hey, we're, do the paperwork for the loan forgiveness. And I was like, how can you be approving them when you don't even know what's already forgiven?
Right.
Oh, well, we're doing it. We're doing it. Well, they were the only ones.
Right.
Well, this past week, I've gotten indications from Trustmark, BBVA, and some others that they're putting the portals out there now.
Okay.
So I'm going to go do the $50,000 ones first.
Right.
Because I had one company that got over $100,000, and then another company that got under the 50. So I'm going to try out probably this next weekend or this holiday time, actually, just to go in and start looking at the paperwork, because I probably got things that between everything that I'm doing, 5 different banks.
Absolutely.
And so if anybody tells you they know about any of this stuff, they don't.
No. What about EIDL? Has there been any direction about EIDL and the EIDL loans yet?
I have not seen anything come out.
It is like so secret squirrel, isn't it?
It is.
The whole thing about EIDL.
Now, an attorney friend of mine just went to work for SBA. So they're hiring attorneys now to go in for a lot of this compliance stuff.
Yeah.
But there's 2 different things with EIDL. And EIDL is EIDL. And I got to look up exactly what that, do you know what it means?
No.
All these initials.
Economic. I have no idea what EIDL stands for at this point.
I'm Googling it. EIDL. Let's see what it means. Economic Injury Disaster Loans. But they gave you so much per employee.
Correct.
Then you got an email weeks later that said, hey, click on this portal and sign up, and did that. And it said, we'll give you a $110,000 loan. Mm-hmm. Well, I only got 30-something thousand from the PPP.
Right.
I didn't do them.
Well, the interesting thing about the PPP and the EIDL is, so you had to, I think it was on the PPP application, you had to talk about how much you got from EIDL. And then in EIDL, you had to describe how much you got from PPP. Well, for the state of Alabama, Governor Ivey had released some additional grant money, and you still had to put the information in there about how much you got from PPP.
They say it didn't
and EIDL.
matter, but they wanted to know how much you got.
They wanted to know how much you got. And so the interaction, and I think I called you like almost in the middle of the night one night, and like, Karen, how does this all intersect?
Because you can.
Well, of course I can. I know exactly who to call, and I have the only person I call when I have those questions. And so I was just very concerned about the intersectionality, because it rolls over into when clients call me, they have questions about that as well. And I'm like, oh, stop. I'm not your tax professional. Please go to your tax professional or, your
they don't know
CPA
either.
Best friend. I'm Karen Simmons.
I'm not a CPA anymore.
Well, you were a CPA at one point, but that's who I go to. And reach out and ask those questions, because it's one of the reasons why I spend so much time developing friendships with people that are in your world, specifically you, is because how many times and how many hours of conversations have we had about how the two of those things connect, and how your people want to know the stuff that I specialize in, and my people want to know the stuff that you specialize in.
Exactly. And I think on that Revive, it was Revive Plus, the Alabama grant.
Right.
And basically Alabama had to spend the money or they had to give it back to the feds, and in a nutshell. And that program's over. It was open for like 3 days.
Right. And it shut, I think it closed on Friday.
Noon, December 4th.
Yeah.
It stopped. And I read in there that if you mess up one thing, it kicks you out. You don't get no second chances.
No takesy-backsies.
No takesies. And so I think I did one of the many that I filed for. I think I did one of them wrong because it was one of the first ones, and I said no to getting money, but then I listed what the PPP money was
in
the amount.
Tricky.
And I think I did that. You know how you second guess yourself on online test? Yeah. And so I hit final answer, and then I went, ugh, but I don't know how that's going to impact it.
Well, to me, it was the same
Why
thing.
ask me if it doesn't matter?
Why does it not matter?
You say in the frequently asked questions that it doesn't matter how much PPP I got to get the Alabama grant.
Right.
But then you're going to ask me how much I got.
Well, it's the same thing to me that was in the PPP paperwork. So they asked you if you were an LLC, if you were a sole proprietor, if you were, a contractor, an independent contractor, and all these things. Well, you can be all of those things. You can be an LLC and be a sole proprietor.
And be taxed as a corporation.
Correct. And so when you ask those questions and then you go back to the forgiveness paperwork and then they ask you, I'm like, oh, well, are they not going to forgive it if you check something? If I checked LLC on the initial PPP paperwork, but then I, put here I'm a sole proprietor, is that going to kick the whole thing out now? Is everybody going to be on the hook? It's tricky.
It's a train wreck waiting to happen.
The unknowns.
To me, everybody reacted too fast, but everybody was desperate at the same time. And so when has the government really helped you? Personal opinion.
No comment. That is my official position as a member of Morale Resource.
Exactly. I was worried about people getting everything that they had out there, and then all of a sudden, somebody wants it back.
You told me that. Yep. That's exactly what you told me.
And sure enough, even unemployment. People were taking unemployment, not going back to work. Well, your employer turned you in, and now you got to pay it back.
Right.
No one's going to get away. It's just the check and balance of our lives. You got to have good and bad. You got to have, if you get too greedy, karma's just going to take it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people weren't looking at the fine print. They weren't looking at the fine print. For example, whether it was the PPP or the EIDL, the reporting requirements on both of those of, you having to keep so many, years worth of records, and you have to produce those records during an audit by the government at any time. So I know people that turned down the EIDL because they were like, I just don't want that level of oversight. I don't have the staff that can keep track of every single penny because it has to fit these categories. And they just didn't want to be bothered with it.
And the grant asked you that. Do you keep up with everywhere every single penny goes?
It sure did. It asked exactly how you kept up with your accounting. Yep, it sure did.
Let me tell you how else the PPP is going to bite people.
How?
Is because all of a sudden the owners gave themselves a big raise or started paying themselves $5,000 in rent when they never had before. If you didn't do it before, you can't do it now.
Right.
So be very careful how you're answering these questions of where you spent the money, because if you have to prove that you had done that the whole pre-COVID.
Right.
Now, another thing is owners were raising their own pay.
Right.
I hate to tell you this, but the only part it'll be forgiven is what the W-2, up to what the W-2 in 2019 said. So I expect some hurt butt feelings to come when all this airs out, but I just don't know how long that's going to be.
And I saw something about the amounts that weren't covered or unforgiven, like the tax rate on it was going to be like over 30% or something. I saw. Did you see that?
Here's the thing about that.
Okay.
When it first came out, they go, it was all over. And I read something recently. It said, we're pushing that those PPP money spent are deductible. Well, let me tell you what. Let's get down here, grab a cup of coffee, and get down to common sense. If, let's say, I got $100,000 in PPP, and I used it for $100,000 of valid salaries, do you really think they're going to let you deduct something they paid for?
Absolutely not.
And I'm saying they. I know it's all our money, but that concept has been long since gone. All right, so they gave us our own money.
Right.
They're not going to let us deduct what we spent it on, even if valid. So I got to looking at one of my company's books. So I had 100 come in, had 100 go out, but was able to pivot and maintain. Sales are down a little bit, compared to past, but I was able to maintain. But now my bottom line's up 100. Okay.
Yeah.
By this loan.
Right.
So, all right. So take the PPP 100 out of it.
Right.
You're back to a normal. But you didn't pay for those salaries.
Right.
Not 100 of them.
Right.
What does that tell you?
You're not gonna be able to deduct.
Everybody's going to pay more in tax if they got PPP money.
Right.
Because you spend it on stuff you would have paid for anyway, normally, that you didn't use your money.
But that's what got everyone's tin hat tingling. You
Yes.
know, it was that very thing. It was that whole common sense part of it of, is it charity? No, it wasn't charity. It was, it was something that they did to stimulate the economy. But we were going to have to pay at some point. And I think that it was responsible to go into that scenario and into that relationship, assuming that you were going to have to pay taxes on it and it wasn't going to be deductible, rather than hoping and crossing your fingers and then, you're shocked. No one should be shocked.
I saw that as them, because they shut you down, they were reimbursing you revenue.
Yeah.
But if you had earned that revenue, you would pay tax and say, I'm having a great year.
Right.
So where's the fairness? Sometimes we all have to admit when things are fair, even though we don't like it, it's detrimental to us. Yeah. And being that, the tax rate.
Like for the example that I ate cake the entire holiday, but I'm upset that I could not fit into the dress that I wore prior to the holiday.
That is so perfect. Somebody said, why you got scrubs on? I said, because my jeans were tight.
They do not fit. And so does it make me happy? No. Was it fair? It was fair. So there you go. That's the analogy.
I know, that was a fair statement. I like it. All right. Anything else on this FFCRA?
Just the record keeping part of it. I just want everybody to make sure that they're keeping records. If you've not kept accurate records up until this point, go and make accurate records right now.
Or reach out to people who know how to do that.
Please, please, please reach out. I've had a number of conversations where people ask me what's the best way to track and what's the best system to use in order to be able to track FFCRA and hours. And I say the one that you're going to actually use. If you come up with this procedure, somebody gives you this long procedure and there's no way you're going to track it that way and the numbers are going to be inaccurate, then it doesn't work for you. Use something that's going to work for you. And for the love of God, do not pencil whip it. Be accurate. Go back, do the research, but that is not a place that you want to guesstimate.
All right. So I guess the bottom line of this whole show is we don't know.
Yes, I think that is the bottom line, that we just don't know. And, there are different challenges that we're still, right now, school is going to be out a little bit. They're getting out a little bit earlier. They're going back a little bit late. Are we going to go back to virtual school? We really don't know. One of the things I did want to talk about quickly is telecommuting and remote workforces. I think that's really important because I've screamed for months and months and months that if you have remote workers that they need to be under a telecommuting agreement. So specifically in that telecommuting...
What does that mean?
So a telecommuting agreement is, so if someone is working remotely, they're basically telecommuting. They're working from a remote location.
Okay.
And under a telecommuting agreement, you are having them to sign something that states that this is not indefinite. That you're not working from home into perpetuity. It's for a specific period of time and for a specific purpose.
And one of mine, they don't want to go back.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about because it's really important. So one of the things that I wanted to mention.
Can we save this for another show? This is really...
Yeah, we can save it for another show.
It's a lot of conversation.
So quickly, just like a quick summary, just be very careful that if you have people that are working from home, that they know exactly what the expectation is, but they also understand that while they are there, you're expecting them to do work. It's not the time to just hang out with the kids and, make them pancakes, 3 times a day. And then, oh, by the way, my work phone just rang. I need to answer it. If you're paying them 40 hours, you need to make sure you're getting 40 hours worth of work.
And just a FYI for anybody out there making pancakes, we can tell when you're not answering the phone and when production's not coming out, so we know when you're making the pancakes. It just shows.
Yeah, and then when I call you and then all I hear is chaos in the back. Like work is not taking place during that time. And, or I'm looking at Facebook and you're showing you're at the beach and but you're getting 40 hours a week. The entitlement of I'm working from home and I'm turning in, you say, okay, well, turn in your timesheet. Oh, I work 40. No, you're not. You're not working 40 hours a week. And so make sure.
It doesn't have to be 8 to 5.
Correct.
Because you have to stop and you have to, help your kid log on to take that test or something. I get all that.
Yeah.
But make sure we're getting at least 8 in a 24-hour period.
Yeah. And to jump back into FFCRA for a quick moment regarding that, If you have an employee who has contracted COVID or is under any of those conditions under FFCRA, but they are able to work from home, they're not eligible for any of that 80 hours worth of money. So they cannot work from home and then get the up to 80 hours for FFCRA. It's only for those people that have to actually come into work, or your remote crews or your maintenance crews, or people that have to come to the workplace or out to do the work. But if they can do the work from their computer at the beach or at home, then they're not entitled to the FFCRA money.
Gia, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell about your company, what it is and what it does.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So Morale Resource is a HR consulting company, and we focus on compliance policies and procedures for small to mid-sized businesses. And so what we are able to do within this company is learn about a client's business and then help to develop very specific procedures and compliance audits for their business. So it's not a out-of-the-box approach. We take care of our people in a very customized and boutique way.
If anybody has any HR questions about all this, they're worried what the do's and what the don'ts are, how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. You can give me a call at 251-300-9690. Email me at Gia Wiggins, Gia, last name Wiggins, Wiggins, at moraleresource, no S at the end, .com, or on my website, www.moraleresource.com.
Well, Gia, you know the drill, so I'll do cheers first today.
Okay.
Cheers to you always being willing to come on this show and talk about topics that we either don't know about or that are really complicated. And I just want to thank you, and cheers for you being my friend.
Thank you. Cheers to you, and cheers to our community. The work that has been done over, since 2020, and the thoughtfulness and the way that the businesses have come together and really created these really firm relationships to be able to help each other out. I mean, we are killing it right now. And so just cheers to our local business community and the listeners who take time out to become educated and to be, thinkers and to think outside of the box. So cheers to all of us. And I'm going to do a specialized cheers to my husband, who was the person that was perfectly okay with me buying an obnoxious 12-foot tree to put into my living room that looks like Rockefeller Center. So I want to give a cheers to him for not stifling my Christmas dreams. So cheers to you, babe.
A very special cheers and Merry Christmas to all you listeners. You make it fun, you make it engaging, and we just want to wish you here at the studio a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays to however you choose to celebrate. We'll see you in 2021.
Please be sure to subscribe to Cheers to Business podcast on iTunes or anywhere else that you get your podcast. Visit our Facebook and be sure to give us a like. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss, shoot us an email from the website cheerstobusiness.com.